Welcome back to another episode of A Record of My Father. Today, we're going to be talking about disaster. I know that I'm suffering currently from the wildfires here in California. Not as bad as some might say. I mean, Palisades and also Malibu are a race, but I'm saying mainly for the entire city. You see these clips of Hollywood on fire, and it's AI, and it's crazy. I don't know. When disaster strikes, people take advantage of it, and it's not proper. So what disasters have you been suffering for? I know you drove up to where was it? No, it wasn't New Jersey. What was
Yep,
it?
New Jersey was one. What was another one? I a while ago, long time ago. I mean, the first disaster I ever went through was when we had our house flooded at Mark Drive. That was truly a disaster. It happened in '64. We lost the house. Salvation Army gave the mother money for us to move out. Literally, the water flooded uh, all the way up to the living room, about midway up the wall. But this is another generation, a long time ago, and that's not really what we're focusing on. We're more focusing on disasters today and the ones that we've recently experienced. And I mean, you're experiencing one on the West Coast, and it's kind of like, I mean, the coolest thing I see is the people that are saying that are helping. And I know that Direct Relief, World Central Kitchen, the LA County Fire Department, and the foundation are all putting out. Habitat Humanity in Greater LA is gearing up to rebuild the houses for the people that need it. So there's a whole lot of effort. The federal government sends FEMA in and they do it. They're still trying to control the fires. They don't have them under control. Uh, Everybody on the nasty media streams are all blaming somebody for something, that it was somebody's fault and they didn't rake the woods or they didn't do this or they didn't do that, or there's all sorts of things. And all those things cost tax dollars. So nobody wanted them when they cost anything. They only want them when they, after the disaster. You should have done that. And it's like, well, you didn't give us the money, so
Well, I think
we
it's
couldn't do
interesting
it.
that the mayor of Los Angeles took
Yeah.
$23 million out of the firefighters' budget. I think it was
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah.
And I think about that and I'm like, why would you take firefighter budgets away when you're in the worst wildfire state in the US?
Well,
And I
well,
don't really understand that.
should we go into that and say,
I would love to talk about that. Yeah,
I
what
mean,
do you
I don't,
think?
what did he do with the money? Because they didn't have enough tax dollars to cover it. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm wondering what they did with the money now. Is their amount of tent cities and homelessness is
Hmm.
pretty much erased. A lot of it is erased. The people that you used to see underneath the bridges are gone. The people down the street from me that were in about a 10 people kind of tent city are gone.
So
And
they
I'm
use the money for
wondering,
that.
yeah, I think they allocated those resources towards homelessness. I
But
think
then,
so.
but then more fire people wouldn't have given more water. So water is the problem. And when you listen to the heads of the fire departments talk, they're like, there is no way we could have prepared for this. We have, 60, 70, 80, 90 mile an hour winds blowing the fire over us and behind us and starting more fires. There isn't a way to catch that. And if there was a way to catch that, it would be, tens of billions of dollars to build nets around the city to catch fire, or whatever, or have a full on forest management system where they do control burns all the time, which they don't do. I mean, that's
They do
and
some of the controlled burns up in Sequoia. I
yeah.
don't necessarily know too much about Malibu Canyon, but yeah, no, I don't think that they're
Well,
doing
when
too
you walk
many
around,
burns up in Malibu Canyon
when you and
or
I walked
anymore.
up,
Yeah,
when you and I walked up there with your mother, and we walked to the top of the observatory,
yeah, the Griffith
I looked
Observatory.
on the ground, and the ground was literally 3 inches of just almost like hay, but it was dead brush that had died. And I would tell you that as a former fire starter, I would say when I was a little kid, I started many fires. Like, bad idea. Anyway, that's the kind of stuff that would just take off. And if there's a little bit of wind, you could burn 10 acres in 10 minutes. It's like crazy. And there's no way to keep control of that because you're always trying to get out in front of it and it's blowing in the air and there's just too much food. You have to hope for the wind to change direction, rain. I mean, it's almost like you wait for Mother Nature to decide to move in a different direction, and you to keep up with fire like that. That's what I believe. Otherwise, you have to spend infinite amounts of tax dollars. I mean, it comes down to when you hear, remember Hurricane Katrina, and everybody talked about, oh, well, the debt levy broke and they should have built it stronger. It's like they did have plans to, but you didn't want to pay for it. Just like they have plans that they could have done more forest management, but you didn't want to pay for it because you're all pushing for less taxes. Guess what? You don't get services with no taxes. And then the argument is well, they shouldn't serve the homeless people, or they shouldn't serve these people, they
Well, I think
shouldn't
that
serve these.
tax dollar initiative
You
is kind of an interesting to look at. Interesting thing to
Yeah.
look at. You want to know why? It's because you see a lot of conservatives taking away socialist aspects of the government, taking away libraries, banning books, what have you. But with the levy, it's funny that you see people in lower socioeconomic conditions suffering from what conservatives in that state have done.
Usually they do.
Yeah, which is just interesting. I just wanted to draw that connection real quick.
Well, you were saying earlier that I thought was very interesting that everybody's focused on the Pacific Palisades because that's where all the rich people live,
Exactly. They have
and
very
that
rarely talked about Altadena and what has happened at Altadena with that fire as well.
and what's I don't see I haven't seen anything on Altadena. What's Altadena?
It's about the equivalent. It's called the Eaton Fire currently, and
Yeah.
that is also about. I think it was like 5,000 acres. Because what is the other
Is
one?
it bigger than Palisades?
It's about equivalent now. Yeah,
Wow.
and Altadena is basically scraped off the map as well, and that is not great, not
And
great.
you
But
don't hear
there's
a word
little to no coverage over there. LA
because there's
Times actually just put out a whole article, and guess what it was about?
what
The Pacific
Palisades?
Palisades.
Yeah.
Altadena was not covered in the article, which I think is pretty interesting.
We're talking about rich people because rich people have more voice because they pay more for it, right?
Yeah, that's fair. Those with
Yeah.
power generally have money, and
Yeah.
those with
And
money
money gets
generally
speak.
have
Yeah.
power.
Right.
No,
And so they get to speak. And that's why we're on the podcast right now because we're speaking because we have lots
exactly.
of money,
And
but we
lots of
need more
power.
listeners.
But what was I talking about? Oh yeah, we're going into sective interviews coming up here for a web developer and a marketing director here. If you out there are a marketing director or have somebody interested in the marketing directing position, please contact Zachary Houston Brown at gmail.com. I'm doing a section of interviews next week about 5 marketing directors and then about 9 web developers. The web development section is basically covered. I think at this point, I think between those people, it's going to be fantastic. But the marketing director, I'd really like to see some more applications for. Thank
I
you.
think I think that it's very apropos that we talk about that while we're talking about disasters.
Yeah, I don't
It's
know. Well, I think also people are looking for work right now due to the fires. So I think that that's also an
No,
issue.
don't you dare be nice. We're not going to deal with that. We don't do that on nice is against the rules on this podcast. We just shit on people, right?
We will also post the, what is it? The spreadsheet, disaster spreadsheet for volunteer positions for Los Angeles in the description of this
Oh,
video.
that's cool. I like
I'm going
that.
to do that as well.
You should do a lot. There's a number of agencies that you can support, and your mother forced us to support. We did like 4 of them the other day. The foundation, we did the Habitat for Humanity for Greater LA. We figured Jimmy Carter died, and you had a fire out there that sort of was 2 birds in one stone, so to speak. And then World Central Kitchen is on the ground there feeding the first responders and all the people that are homeless now. They've got a big contingent out there. Doctors Without Borders is out there. Direct Relief was out, as I was mentioning earlier. They're all the people are there, but the fire has to stop because you don't want people to die.
Exactly. I think that the containment rate, the last I saw, was 11% on the Palisades fire and then on the Eaton Canyon fire, which is crazy because I actually went to the Eaton Canyon waterfall last year or two, yeah, last year. And that was a great, what? No, it was 2 years ago. Wow. And then that was a great time, but that's all gone now. I imagine the water is too,
It's going to be
sadly.
easier to get to.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Gosh. But also, I did the job plug as well because I'm actually interviewing a couple people that have been affected by the fire directly.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So, and they are interested in work.
Yeah.
So I think
That's
that
good.
that
That's
is a
good.
part that I can do, pragmatic
Yeah.
work that is. But I am
Yeah.
planning on volunteering next week.
Yeah.
I'm going
Good.
to, yeah, for
Good.
the fire department and go help out where I can.
Wow. Because I think about the disasters that I've seen. that I've personally seen, besides the one, in the 60s, is uh, I got a wild hair, I don't know, about a decade or a little more than a decade ago, that I would see these things and these people and be in horrible places. And I would say, what can I do to help? And I think the first one I did was Henryville. And
I remember Henryville. I do
and
remember that. The
yeah, I
box truck,
rented
right?
a 10 by 14 U-Haul truck, went to Costco, wrote down a list of all the different items that people could possibly use, filled the truck up, 4 pallets, and then drove it down there. And it was weird because going into it, you're driving along and you see an exit, and there's nothing wrong. And you're like, what the hell? People are talking about it. And then you come up to the Henryville exit and you're like, you can't go there. And I'm delivering stuff. And they're like, okay. I didn't call anybody. I just showed up. And so I go up to the hill and I look down, and it looks like somebody had taken 100 bulldozers and just pushed the whole town up against the mountains.
Well, that's very
It
similar to Asheville right now, right?
is just wiped out. And then what wasn't wiped out was blue tarped. The high school, which luckily no one was at school, was gone. It was just a pile of rubble. It was like it was like somebody made a Lincoln Logs building and it just smushed it, and then it was just all like intertwined there, and it was just the weirdest thing. And I went down and gave them the stuff and went to. I mean, one of the interesting things, whether you're religious or not, most of the places that people turn to for food in these times are religious based, like churches. They will go to churches to look for food. I went to the biggest church there, gave the, and unloaded the supplies. They were shocked because all mine were new and didn't have expiration dates, but most of the food they have is a lot of it is they have to look at each can to see if someone's given them something that's been on their shelf for 6 months and it's expired or not expired, because they cannot give out expired food, which, for health reasons you understand.
Very
But
similar to when we volunteered at the Sum Kitchen, and they
yeah,
used to get maybe hundreds of loaves
yeah,
of bread a week.
yeah,
If anybody knows anything about bread, it goes moldy rather quickly.
yeah,
So I remember just throwing out maybe 40 loaves of bread one day.
yeah.
It's
And
covered
you
in
were just
mold.
like, what a waste.
Why
But
would I don't understand if it's coming from a bakery, and that makes sense. But
yeah,
as somebody that buys bread at the grocery store and would go and donate it to a soup kitchen, that makes no sense. Because I don't
yeah,
even
but
think they ended up. Well, I guess Martha's Table Sandwich Making, that makes sense, right?
yeah, but
But
you know
that's
what it
not necessarily
was.
soup kitchen. Yeah.
Do you know what it was? They had a deal with Panera. Panera has it in the
Oh, I
Northern
didn't even
Virginia area,
realize that.
and they're really, really good. Panera is amazing that they make their food, they make their bread, they make all the stuff, they put it out there. You look at it, and it's there for I think 48 or 56 hours or something like that. And then the trucks come. Capillary Food Bank is one of the main trucks that come, and they pick up all the stuff that Panera is going to pitch. It's past its good date. It's certain fresh date, and then they take that and then they distribute it to all of the different facilities that feed the homeless. Now it's only good for another 48 hours, so if they get a shit ton of bread, you're giving it out. And I mean, I worked at some, and they got Panera bread, and you would have like 100 trays of sticky buns, you know, and people come in, and you get about, I guess we got about 300 to 400 people a day then, and you put, like, instead of putting one sticky bun on a plate, you put two, and then you're like, hey, you might as well use them all, give them away, because you're like, consume what is going to be useless or worthless tomorrow.
Well, that's a
And
lot better
that's a constant thing.
than what Domino's does. And they throw away, or even Dunkin' Donuts, or also Zara or Walmart when they burn their clothes in a certain burn facility,
Right.
and they don't donate it at all. Because if you think about it, a lot of it goes to waste. I remember I was talking to my roommates the other day about Tom's. Are you familiar with Tom's shoes? It's like a canvas shoe with a
Mm-hmm.
very thin bottom.
Yeah.
Takes about 10 cents, probably less than that to make, maybe a penny. And they do this whole program about buy a pair and we donate a pair to Africa. And I
Yeah.
thought the funniest thing was that I watched this documentary about all the shoes that go to Africa on a yearly basis and how they were saying in the documentary, stop sending us shoes. Why do you keep sending us shoes? Culturally, it doesn't make any sense. And then also at the same time, you would like how many like you could rather build a well or provide a clean form of drinking water than these egregious amounts of shoes
You
going
should
there.
take a piece of profit off the amount of shoes that you make and take that and then put that into building a well, something that people need as opposed to something that, it's the World Bank and building hydroelectric power for the southern part of Africa. And you're like, you got to, well, they have a couple $1 billion. They build a hydroelectric plant, but nobody can afford electricity. So you go down there and you see all these huts when you drive down the road and you see electrical wires that go 200 miles, and none of them are attached to any of the houses because none of the houses could afford, which they couldn't afford it before, to hook up. So they're generating all this power and no one has electricity and no one's allowed to use electricity because they'd have to pay for it.
It
It's
seems like
not
another form
free.
of the
And it's
kind of
sort of like
Christian
no
mission
one's,
almost, right? It's
yeah,
another
it's no one's
institution
thinking
going
it
in there
through.
and doing some more egregious acts by saying, "Oh, if you convert, we'll give you food and water," which I think is crazy to me.
I I talked to one of the people that worked at the World Bank, and she said she was like a mid-level person, and she was talking about all the different projects they did, and they would like and statistically they look at what happens. We build a village, we see what happens, we see it how it helps people, and then we track it for years and see whether it's good or bad. And she said the number one thing that we have done that has been good is to give them money, directly money. And she said, "It's I know that you give them $10 million. The guys at the top take 10%. The guys at the next level take 10%. The guys at the next level get 10%. The people at the bottom get like 2%. Well, that 2% is 10 times what those people would usually get. And then they build a better village. And they said, we did this in Ethiopia. We did it for 30 years. And now Ethiopia is that economy that you don't hear about where everyone's starving every year. Now it's the Sudan. In the Sudan, we go in and people do emergency food programs and things like that. But we haven't done the thing. We have all of this. We're talking about building infrastructure projects and stuff like that. When it comes right down to it, we, if we give them capital and the opportunity to make something, that changes everything. Because if you give them capital, they buy a cow, and then they have milk, or
Heifer,
they buy a goat,
yes,
or they
yes,
buy
I
a goat and
remember
a
Heifer
cow,
was
and
a
then
good
they make a
organization.
that kind of thing is something like that sort of steps up their economy, and that's what makes them change. That's what allows them to go from uh, living hand to mouth on a daily basis to maybe on a weekly, then a quarterly, then a monthly, then annually. Every so often it bothers them, when the drought comes. But for the most part, they become a much more stable society. And that's kind of what you're looking for, is you're looking to change the whole outlook of everything. And it's a hard thing. It's like we went to New Jersey when we did Sandy. I did that one. And I did a truck of what is it? I drove up with a buddy of mine. We went there to dump off the
Who did you drive
supplies.
up with?
I drove up with Jeff.
Oh, I didn't
We
realize that.
drove up there, and it was the weirdest thing in the world because we drive in, and I remember that Christy Alley had bought a trailer truckload full of stuff to give. You never heard about it in the news or anything, but I talked to the guy there, and he had been waiting for 3 days to get it unloaded because they didn't know how to do it. you know
I don't know
and
why we need
and we went
infrastructure. I
there we
understand
went there
looters and
and we
things.
couldn't find anybody to we called the churches, and they're like, we have too much stuff, well, are you giving it to the people? And it got, everything was clogged, and so we unloaded ours in a warehouse, and I don't know whatever happened to it. It's about 30 grand, but who cares? And it did what it did. And then I started to think to myself that, you know instead of you trying to get personal actuation or self actualization by doing it yourself, that it's better in the long run and for the people to give money directly and to give it to the
Oh, 100%,
organizations.
without
The
a doubt.
organizations are on the ground because, see, I thought, always people always say, well, you need diapers and you need Depends for old people and you need gloves and you need water and every nobody has a source of protein. So I bought cases of tuna fish and I bought cases of like canned chicken and all that kind of stuff like that. So I figured that that would be something that people wouldn't be able to readily get, and he would give to them. And that was really good in Henryville, but in New Jersey, it was like it sat in a warehouse. I don't know whatever happened to it. The next time I went up, I went to Atlantic City, which was an aftermath of Sandy, and there we delivered beds, and we delivered beds. It was from a church here that their
I remember
constituents were,
this. Yeah.
yeah. And we took, I don't know, two giant trucks up of beds, and we delivered them in the inner city and took them, to the. I mean, it was eye opening to see that when you carry a twin bed up into an apartment, a one bedroom apartment that had six people living in it, all of the clothes were in one corner, and that's what the kids slept on. And we had to move the clothes out of the way to put the bed down. I mean, it was very uh I mean, I grew up in some interesting, what do you call them,
Circumstances.
circumstances, but nothing like that. And when you come out, when you look there, the water had flooded all of the lower area, and the lower areas where all the poor people lived, and all of their houses up to about waist high. They had to cut all of the inside insulation, everything out because it's going to mold. So it's all sitting on all the corners and hadn't been hauled away. And it was just kind of heart wrenching, when you see that stuff and you see the people. And then more recently, when the wife and I went to New Jersey, we went to New Zealand, and we went to and there was a what the hell's the hurricane from the south?
Oh yeah, I remember. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. They don't call it a hurricane, they call it something else.
Monsoon.
Monsoon.
Cyclone.
Well, we had a cyclone. I think we had a cyclone that hit, and they're like,
Well, I
"Oh,
think
you
you
came
need a
during cyclone
monsoon to
season."
have a cyclone, don't you?
I don't know, but it hit, and it had. We were on our way. We were traveling through New Zealand, and it hit the part of it, and there's only one major artery that goes up through the center, and it knocked out the bridges, and we couldn't get to our hotel, and we ended up going and staying in this little trailer park area, and the lady said, "Come on in, you can stay here." And it's a little, like, we got a room and no power, and she took all of her food out of her freezer, and for all the little guests there, she cooked all of her food. It was a great time, but also you saw, and this is one of the most important things I learned from that. We're driving down the street, the wife's driving, and we're driving by a church, and it had all of these uh it had a graveyard, and the graveyard had couches and all sorts of people's stuff that was taken away from their homes, and it settled into the graveyard, and you saw people in the graveyard moving the stuff away from the gravestones, and they were crying. And I go to take a picture
Why would you do that?
because I don't know. I just like, this is something that is so heart wrenching that I want to remember this exactly, other than it's painted in my brain because I remember the lady, and
Hmm.
I was going to take a picture, and my wife looks over and said, "Don't take a picture of other people's misery." And I just,
Yeah, yeah, I see that. You see a lot of combat
that,
photographers too
that,
doing that, and I mean it's an
that,
occupation, isn't it?
yeah, it just, and I can still see it. I know it. I saw it. It was, you know, and the water hadn't, it only receded like two-thirds of the graveyard, so it was still there, but they were moving just couches off and
Were they
I mean, I
below ground or
realized
above ground?
the what.
The
Oh,
graves.
they're below.
Oh,
It was
okay.
not like New Orleans or what do you call it? It was not like Paris, where we have the mausoleums and stuff that are above. Nothing at all. It was all underground. So they had their stones, and the stones were kind of, some of them were tilting, but it was just like you just saw in the look that no one was smiling, and me being Mr. Perky, make a joke about anything. I couldn't even, it stopped me in my tracks to to see that type of human misery. And
Well, while we're on the topic of news and world disaster, in South America, there are wildfires ravaging multiple countries that have little to no coverage. Isn't that interesting?
yeah, so I guess it's if it burns the wealthy, then it's worth something to speak about. And then,
Exactly.
I mean, it's all just, they
So,
seem to be on the news using it as a political bludgeon. against whoever they want at that particular point in time. Like in Tennessee, they were trying to use it against somebody, and you're just thinking like, you know, and then they're bitching and moan about government services not doing this, that, or the other when they were, and but
Well, now you have people that create a
you know,
conspiracy off of anything.
yeah,
And it's a little disheartening to see that. But at the same time, the US government hasn't given a lot of people something to trust in a while. So I
right.
think that is kind of what you get with these conspirators, right? This idea of
Well,
churning
you
out a
want something
narrative that is directed because of a history.
you want something like an NPR that is going to come in and only report facts, and then people will say, well, it's liberal based, and it's like, well, but it's facts. If it's not facts, point to something that they're and when they make a mistake, they actually print a retraction and they say we did a retraction and they do it, and it's funny that you see media in general changing, but not like the big television stations, not like that. They're looking for the brightest, and if we can rile up the hate, we can get more viewers. If we can talk about conspiracies, we can get everybody going like, "Oh man, really? Is it they're sky poopers? They're pooping all over thing? Yeah, yeah. That's who said that? Who? Somebody semi-famous that isn't in the news lately that's trying to gen up their followers hops on and says, "Yeah, I saw him," and you're just like, "Oh God." It's
Jeez.
like and they're doing the same thing in Hollywood. They're going to the actors that haven't had work for a while because they're all jumping up and yelling about their houses being burnt down and that they didn't buy the fire insurance. You're like, well, whose fault is that?
Well, also, State Farm discontinued a large swath of people's fire insurance 2 months ago
Right.
prior to this. And
Well,
that's where also the conspiracy comes from is a lot of
well,
the
when they did that, was there not an option? Because they can't do
I have
that.
no idea. I'm not very
One
read
of the
up on the
things that
topic.
insurance can't do is they can't cancel you without a certain amount of notice. I
That's what I was
found this out
wondering
with
as
my health
well.
care last year. They have a 90-day notice. And what happens is people go, well, there is no way that me here in McLean will ever have to worry about a flood. And I will bet you that everybody in North Carolina that's in Asheville said, I will never have to worry about a flood. They all said it, and they were wrong. And there's things like that we just don't anticipate, and they come in and they materially change our life if we don't have insurance. And also, insurances they're writing coverage for things that they can make money at. I mean, I paid car insurance for 40 years now, 50 years, and I gotta wonder how much they made. My home, you know, the home insurance, and I've had a house since 1990 and been paying insurance on it, so a couple grand a year
Something that I
for
thought about too was the idea that imagine if a certain insurance company went bankrupt due to a natural disaster,
they
and
have.
would they get bailed out? How would that work?
Well, the thing is, there's certain associations have cushions, but usually the little guys get screwed.
Yeah,
I mean, in the
always.
end, that's usually what happens. You can't if you're going to sue somebody in bankruptcy. That's hard. What you're going to have to get them to claw back their money, and it's going to be years, and you're not going to see it right away. It's not like someone's going to come out and champion for the little guy because there's there's no upside. If you help the little guy, you don't really get anything. You only thing you get is the idea knowing that you help people that couldn't fight for themselves. There's no there's no bunch of TV people saying, "Hey, let's talk about him because he helped the little guy." They don't give a shit. They only care about the people that help the Oprahs and help and the Trumpies and all those that they get the money and so they get to have the voice. And if something affects them and hurts them, then that's right on the news and that's right in front because they got the power and the voice. And the little guy, they'll only use the little guy when they think it can add a new level of something to, hey, we can get some tears on this and
If it
we can bludgeon.
influences those of the same socioeconomic class, right, in
Yeah,
a
if we can
voting
bludgeon
standard or
somebody
something
else
like
with this
that.
poor person, you know, I
No,
mean, they were doing
exactly.
that with the initial payments that FEMA gave, is they gave them $800 or $900, and people were like, oh, I can't believe that's horrible. That's all they gave. Well, you idiot. That's what they do. They give you an initial payment so you have cash in your hand right away so you can take care of immediate expenses, and then you file the paperwork to get more. That's what you do. Okay? They don't just hand you 50 grand and say go have a party, because they don't that's not the process. There's too much opportunity for fraud if they give out huge numbers. That's why they give out smaller numbers, and that's basically to get you through the coming weeks, to get you started. Well, on social media they said that is all they're giving them. They lost their home and everything and they got $800, and you're like, why are you spreading that lie bullshit? Because
Well,
it's
that was the
just
whole thing too about how fire hydrants didn't have water in them, in not only the Pacific Palisades but also Altadena. But
yeah.
at the same time, I feel like they've been doing this for years, the allocation of water, because until last year or about a year and a half ago, we didn't have the aqueducts full. They hadn't been full, or not aqueducts, but reservoirs
We
hadn't
call
been
it
full.
drought.
Yeah, exactly. And until the monsoon that happened, I think about a year and a half ago, that's when they filled up again. But you're also relying on an infrastructure that is normally droughted, so the allocation of the water from the reservoir probably didn't happen because of that.
And also it's owned by a lot of different people that are private, like Nestle pulls huge, hundreds of millions of gallons out of that area for their
That
bottled
man's
water.
evil, dude. That man's so evil.
And then you have Resnick, the Resnicks. They own a piece of the aquifer, and originally they were supposed to use a piece of it, and they're using it for their avocados. You eat avocados, you eat what the heck is it? Grapes, pistachios is the other big one. They're big, huge water eaters, but they're growing those in the valley, and they need a lot of water, and they're using the water that typically would have gone to the people. But and they even have the stories where who's the guy that one of the guys that's moaning and groaning about how the government's so sad. He took the water from the aquifer and watered down his mall and saved the mall, but then the homes around it didn't get saved. So,
I will give a shout out
I
to
think the
Planet
words,
Fitness that I think one of the only companies that said that it could be a safe refuge for those from the fire.
oh wow,
Yeah, which
that's
I
really
was
cool.
very, very surprised by. But you know what?
That's
I'm not actually surprised by it because Equinox would never do that.
Yeah,
Maybe LA Fitness would never do it as
yeah.
well. But it is funny that
Well, to
Planet
come out and
Fitness
it's
did
like
it.
when you think about it, when you're homeless, when they're out something. I mean, you've been homeless, I've been homeless, or not really homeless, sort of without a home
Home
by choice,
evasive.
by choice. But and the hardest thing to find for me, I don't know if it was for you, is a shower. Uh, you couldn't get clean.
Yeah, I think I went to the
That
gym.
Yeah, you had to go. You always
Yeah.
had to have a gym access, and if you're poor, well, you don't have that, and that's one of the things. Food is something you can kind of get in a lot of different places as long as you're mobile. But showering and getting clean enough to not smell like a pig, and also clothes, doing your laundry is another thing that
Which
that's
takes
why
time. Being
people
poor is expensive. It's
they
a
put
very
clothes
expensive
on, they
thing.
put clothes on, and they wear them till they smell, and they throw them away. And you're like, well, that's what a waste. And it's like, yeah, it is. But you gotta, if you've got a better system to where they can go and do all their laundry, well, okay. But
People don't
and the
realize
laundry is,
how
yeah.
being in the low socioeconomic status like that is really
Well, I
expensive.
mean,
It's a very
what's
expensive
gonna think about
way of
this,
life.
and what is this gonna do to the homeless population?
I was wondering that as well, and how
I
many
mean,
new homeless people there will be, because the Pacific Palisades also contains a lot of people that have 401ks, that are on
yeah,
Medicare. And imagine you buy a house, I don't know, in the 90s or in the 80s, and you've been living there off a certain amount of
30, 40
money.
years.
Yeah. And then that's all gone. You have to buy a new house. Or what are
Hmm.
your options, right? Unless it gets covered, but a
Well,
lot
that's
of
our
the
good
coverage
friend
is
Pam.
gone, so I don't know.
Pam
I
said a
don't know.
lot of the people there were friends of hers, and they were not these ultra wealthy people that everybody's painted.
Altadena, yeah,
It's kind of like
Altadena
this
is not it.
community here that I live in. The houses are over $1 million a piece, but if you bought the house back in the early '90s, it was like 150, 200,000, which is a lot of money then, but it wasn't crazy money. And now the houses are crazy money. So it's like uh over time, you've created this huge amount of wealth in one asset, which is your home, and keeping up with it is insuring it. And as you say, as it goes up, the taxes go up and all those things, and people they forego some of those things. And if you don't insure it and you lose it, I mean, that's your biggest asset. What are you going to do then?
Exactly, and all your
And
equity is gone
yeah,
after that.
they're going to have to
It's
go
really
to
sad.
Habitat. They're going to have to go to Habitat to look there to get into new places and start over at, I can't imagine starting over at my age. I just think about that going like, oh my gosh, can you imagine being 65 and being wiped out and just going like, well, what are you going to do?
No,
You know,
I can't imagine it.
you try to look
I'm
back at
starting
your,
now, right? And I don't, and I realize that
yeah.
with the business and everything like that.
If they burned everything down over there where you are right now, where you in Rosemont,
Rosewood, yeah.
Rosewood, Rosewood. I mean, you showed that video from your balcony and it was dark in the middle of the day. And I was like,
Yeah, it was pitch black outside. It was really,
yeah,
really bizarre. But
you just did that to
also,
scare your mom.
you know what I kind of remember is the driving back from the beach in torrential downpour. And we're driving over the Bay Bridge, and I'm hydroplaning on top of the bridge on the very, very top. And it's
Yeah.
pitch black outside. It's night, and it's equivalent to
Yeah.
a monsoon. And you know what happens? The lightning. When the lightning happens, it lights up the sky. I can't see anything because it's all white. And
Yeah.
oh my God, it just reminds me of that as well when you were talking about New Zealand. And
Yeah.
imagine hydroplaning on the Bay Bridge. That was not fun. And you had to drive really slow. And people were crashed on top of the bridge and they were out of their cars in the torrential downpour.
Ooh, I would
I was
never.
like, I
Ooh,
would never
ooh,
do that. I would just wait
no.
till I would call somebody. Yeah. But
I
I
would
think
say
even
pick me
cell
up because
tower
I'm
was
too.
down.
Yeah, I'm already
Yeah.
frightened to death of that bridge.
Yeah, that bridge was
I cannot.
I
Yeah.
didn't really have an issue with that until that time because I
Yeah.
was doing 10 miles an hour across the
Mhm.
entire bridge. So that gives you time to think about where you are and how high you are. And I was like, wow, maybe I am scared of heights here. I don't know.
Well, when you're going across the bridge, you have the walls that allow you not to look out.
Yeah, we were
And
wallless on the
that's
way
really
back.
cool. When you're on the way back, you just have three little rails on each side, and you're thinking like, and they're probably much stronger than the walls, but I don't know. But you can see, and by seeing means for me, if you're frightened of heights, you know that when you get closer to the edge, that it feels like it's pulling you off. So all I would do is just squint, and I would get cupped eyes like that, and I would only look at the road, the little road right in front of me, and I'd hold, red knuckled on the steering wheel. And I had luckily the Subaru has this adjusted driving, so it stays an existing speed and a distance away from the car in front of you, and it slows down when that car slows down. It speeds up, so I didn't have to worry about speed because when I didn't have to worry about speed, I slowed down to about 10 miles an hour, drive over, people be beeping at me and flicking me off, and I would wait till I got to a low enough level to flick them off back, but I was too scared when I was driving over.
You always got to wait till they get off the bridge to flick them off back, you know?
Yeah,
But
yeah, because I
imagine not having the feel of getting pulled, but actually being pulled by the hydroplaning of your car on the bridge. And that's what I was really worried about because this was only 2 months after the woman
yeah,
driving the semi truck who got cut off by a truck driver and was forced to go into the guardrail or
yeah.
something like that. I forgot
She
what
went
happened.
in and
Her
over and
her
into the
brakes
water.
failed. Yeah, and then went in and over, and I think went into the water, if I
She
remember.
lived.
Yeah, yeah, she did live. But that was
Yeah.
also not the highest part of the bridge.
No,
I
that
think that
was like
was,
much lower. That was
yeah.
only like a 60 or 80 foot drop. It
You're
was
not
not
even
from.
supposed to change lanes on the bridge though, which I don't.
No,
Yeah,
no, and a lot of people don't care, and
no, the majority of
it's
people don't care.
the way drivers are, It
Ugh,
says 45, but it means 60,
this is
I
not the
drive in
truth.
this if I'm not going to drive nuts, I drive in the slow lane or the middle lane if I can. But I usually always drive in the middle going over because I don't want to be next to either side. And on the way back, I drive on the right hand side so I can stay away from looking. It's a frightening thing. I don't want to look over the edge of the over the edge of the bridge because it, it 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 makes me get pulled over, and I don't like that. It's not a
Speaking
good thing.
about disaster,
Yeah.
disaster, and crazy weather events. You remember Snowmageddon in 2012, or was it 2009? I think it was
That
'09.
36 inches of snow where we had it in three big dollops.
I
We
didn't
had
go to
a
school for 2 weeks or something like that. It was awesome. Oh my gosh.
yeah, I think your mother hung herself. No.
Not longer. Oh my God. No, that was a lot of snow though. You remember that? It was
Yeah,
about
but I
30
had a
feet.
snowblower, so we were always, I mean, it was great.
Was that the year you bought it?
Yeah, no, it was bought earlier. I made the mistake in like 2002 or 3. Uh, I went to a show in LA in the wintertime. I forgot it was like, a Lagny meeting. Not that. It was like law librarians of Northern SoCal or NoCal or one of those. And I went out there and oh no. Yeah, and it snowed. It snowed here and it snowed like a foot. And she was here by herself. Whoa. When I came back, she was like speaking to me in muffled terms.
I mean, we shoveling that driveway is
Yeah.
it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. It
Yeah,
makes
it's
you
nuts.
wonder
It's
if you
nuts.
just want to leave it until spring.
You do.
Because there's so much snow on that driveway. And not to
Yeah.
mention that, but after you get done shoveling it, the amount of ice that accumulates. I don't know why, but
Yeah.
I think it's just cold in Virginia, that's why. But
Yeah.
man,
And
I
it's
have
like
shoveled that and
my
that's not fun.
driveway is like that. And it
For those not watching,
is
it's
50
about a
meters.
90-degree angle, yeah. About a
it's,
90-degree
it's
angle
only
his
like,
driveway is.
it's like 45 and it's like, and it's probably 50 meters by 7. And then the pad at the bottom is got to be a square of 40 by 40. And then it goes around to the front where the basketball court is, and you can park on the basketball court, which I don't usually take that off. But
That's a nightmare.
yeah, I don't, it's like, so now we move the cars to the round and then I can do it all. And I did it all the first time. It was only like, I think we had 6 or 7 inches, and that was pretty easy to get out of,
Did it
you
snow this
know.
year yet?
Yeah, we got 7 inches, and then yesterday we got last night we got another 2 inches.
And you
So
did that? You snowblowed it?
not today. I just sprinkled a bunch of burn salt on it, and it's all fine,
Ah,
you
well,
know.
that's nice.
And speaking of disasters, the tree at the top that was bouncing against the top wire. Uh, One of my neighbors noticed this about 9 months ago that it was on fire, and that I had a deodar cedar that was hitting against the top power line, and it actually caught on fire. Well, then it
Oh, it
was
caught on
out.
fire. Oh,
It
geez.
caught on fire. You could see the tree was all black and one of the limbs had burned off. Well, I call the fire department and the fire department says, "Is it on fire now?" And it's like, "No, but it's leaning. And if the wind blows just a little bit, because the tree was straight up and then it tilted because of the wind got so bad. So it was now within 18 inches of the fires. So if the wind blows a little bit, it's going to touch it again and catch on fire again." They're like, "If it's not on fire, we don't have anything to do with it. You got to talk to the men." Said, "Well, it was on fire. You have to call the fire department." Like, no, it's not on fire. Was it ever on fire? And it's like, and then I'm like, oh shit, they're gonna move me around. No, it's fine. And then I said, we need to get a truck out here to, and then so they had somebody out there. I called them. Uh, they had somebody come out in 2 or 3 weeks, and they marked it, and that would have been, I think, in March. They marked it with a blue strip to come down. Today, what is today? This is March of last year.
Today's Saturday. My God, 11th? January
January,
11th?
a guy walks in, knocks on my door, and says, "I'm working up the street. I'm with Dominion. I see this tree here. It's going to fall. It's going to break the power lines." And I said, "Yeah, I know. I reported it 9 months ago, 10 months ago, whatever." I told him.
I
I told him it
recall
was a,
this, yes.
and he goes, he said, "It's an emergency." And I said, "Well, I told him it was an emergency then." He said, "Hopefully your emergency is more important than mine." And then he kind of laughed and he said, "I'll get him out here today." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, sure. Have at it. Love it." And me disbelieving it's going to happen, walk away with my barking, screaming dogs. He walks up the hill. I asked him if he wanted anything to drink. He said no. I did. He want any bribe. He didn't ask for any money,
Keep trying to
so I didn't give him.
poison people, don't you?
Yeah.
Stop
But
trying to poison people. Jeez.
anyway, he goes up, and then that was at say 12 o'clock, and 30 minutes ago they stopped Asplunda. I love that name.
I actually met the owner in college. I met
Yeah.
the son of the owner, Edwin Asponda, actually. I'm not even kidding. I'm not even kidding. At Denver, I met him and he was like, "Oh, my dad owns a tree cutting company." I'm like, "Your dad owns Asponda?" And
Yeah.
he's like, yeah. And I'm like, whoa, dude. Shout out Edwin if you're
Whoa.
listening out there. Yeah,
Ass.
crazy. I
I
still
just the
follow him on
name just
Instagram too. No,
the name's so funny.
I could never
But
get
anyway,
past
they
that.
were
Yeah.
out here. They had the big cherry picker comes up over the top, drops down because my problem is that I have it's very steep off of the road, so my trees are growing from the road up over top. So they need an outside cherry picker that will go over the top wire and then reach down. So they need the really, really large one. And they took it out in 30 minutes and it's gone. And it's been,
Well, that's nice.
and because everybody kept
They do
saying,
great work.
it's gonna fall and knock the power out for the whole community. I'm going like, yeah, I can see that. I know that. What do you want me to do? And then I get threatening little letters put in my mailbox, and I'm like, I don't know what you want me to do. I've contacted Dominion. Please contact Dominion as well. Tell them that it's horrible and it's going to go. I got a generator. I don't give a shit if you guys lose power. I didn't say that, but I was thinking like, I'm really beside myself because I talked to somebody. He comes out, he looks at it, and he said it's going to be $15,000 or $20,000 to take the tree down. And I'm like thinking about it, and he said, but the last time he had somebody take a tree down, he said he said they had the non-bonded group come in.
What does that
They had
mean?
a guy climb up the tree with a chainsaw, climb the tree with the tree that is touching the power line with a chainsaw, and he cut off a limb. The limb hit the top power line and cooked him.
Wait, you watched this?
No, he was telling me the story, and he said the guy was dead in like
30 seconds, if that.
quick, but it was ugly, and he said that guy jumped in his truck and left.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the guy's dead in the tree, and the homeowner sitting there with the company that he paid because he wanted to save money, and he's got a dead guy in his tree, and I'm like,
Well, why
holy
would you
shit.
run from that? That makes you look really bad. Maybe they didn't have a business license or something like that. I don't know.
Obviously they weren't bonded, and somebody dies on your site, you want to be away from that. I mean, I got hit by a cab, and it was our company and also the cabbie's fault because one of our flagmen had waved the cab on, and it came through and it hit me, and all they could think about was get him off the site. They wanted to get me to the hospital and get me the hell away from there, so I couldn't say anything. They
What
wanted
what,
me
what
gone.
company
They
was this?
wanted me gone. And then another time we were working
What
on a
company?
site,
What company was this?
Newton Asphalt. And
Ah,
then
okay.
another time, but this is the manager, so you can't really blame the people at the top because they know that they would get shit for it. And this was 40 years ago, so statute of limitations and reputation have probably all changed, and everybody there is dead. So it isn't anything to do with that. But I remember we were on an on ramp, Braddock Road, and this is another time, and we're running a rotomill, a grinder that grinds it up so you can actually put a new when you lay the pavement in again, it
Yeah.
it will go even with the gutters, so you don't have to redo the gutters. So you grind the asphalt down. Well, we ground it down, but one of the hydraulic hoses broke,
Mm,
blows hydraulic fluid all over the on ramp. Those curly on ramps,
yeah.
pulls the rotomill to the top, right?
Hmm.
Now there's probably 30 gallons or 20 or whatever of hydraulic fluid, which is like slick oil, all over the on ramp. Motorcycle guy comes on. We're standing there. I see him. It doesn't register. He comes around the corner. The bike goes out from under him, and he skids all the way down. The bike slams and rolls off. It doesn't hit him. He slides down the turnstile. He wasn't speeding or anything like that. Ambulance gets called, and immediately our manager's like, load the truck, get the fuck out of here now. They want out. Get away, get away, get away, because they would have been liable because obviously they were. And I didn't know anything about it. I just got go on to the next job site. We're doing leave. Go back to man. Go back to get everybody out of there. But I just thought about it. When I saw the guy because I checked on him and he was okay. He was just he luckily he had everything on, but he didn't have gloves, and his hands were both. Was it this hand? This hand was the one that was just he had a raspberry on his whole like all the top
Well,
parts
if you know a
there.
company's liable, you can certainly say that
Yeah,
something
but you're
else
18
hurts
and
or
seven.
things
I
like
was
that.
18, I think, maybe
Well,
19.
I'm talking about the motorcycle guy. You could also say it's because people get in car crashes all the time. They say, "Oh, my back
Yeah,
actually hurts. You know, my
yeah,
legs hurt," and then immediately are seeing them in court.
yeah. But if yeah, I would have thought that they would have paid for that, but I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know what the outcome of that was. I didn't stay. Uh, they obviously stayed. The ambulance came and took him away. I don't know what happened to his bike. I don't know what the resolution of that was. Uh, I have no idea. I didn't chase it. I didn't try to help him. I didn't quit my job and get fired for speaking up, saying, "Hey, we're liable." I
It
didn't do that. I didn't.
was our
I
fault.
didn't.
It
Should
was
I have
on
done it?
us.
Probably. Would I have lost my job in a minute? You know, would it have
Probably.
mattered? I don't know. I would have got another job. It was $6 an hour. I was pretty employable then, and I knew a lot of things, and I could jump on equipment and drive
You were
stuff.
pretty
And
employable then, but you're not employable now. Is that what you're
hell
saying?
no, now I'm more employable for like, uh,
Not for asphalt, I would imagine.
well, I couldn't. Yeah, I don't think I would be good at like they're building a house next door. I used to do roofing. I couldn't do roofing there. I could
Yeah.
help a little bit, but I would be the guy that was just,
Roofing's scary. Roofing's scary
yeah,
to me. I don't know if
yeah.
I want to get up there and do
Or
that.
even doing I did the structure itself, carpenter's helper, because carry everything. I've done brickwork, block work, all that's. I've been a helper. So hey, carry that over there, move that over there, move this over here. When the guys are doing brick, I was the mud guy, so I
Yeah,
would always fill
assistant
up
or
the
helper
mud
generally
containers.
means that you're carrying everything.
Yeah,
From
I carried
what
everything,
I've
and
learned
so
in
I
my
was
time.
I was strong, I was quick, and I would anticipatory. I would not wait for you to say, "Hey, I got no more fucking," because usually it's every third word's a cuss word when you're in construction, and but it doesn't mean anything. Anyway, you would go and refill you would see that when it was down to this low in the trough, that it took them about a half an hour to use that, and it took you about a half an hour to make the mix. So you go make the mix. I didn't think that was rocket science, but they thought it was
No,
rocket
not
science
really.
to
Making the
to
mud is not that
anticipate
hard.
before it was empty and then come over. How'd you know I needed it? You know,
Mm.
or if they're really slow and the other guy's fast, you'd be like, I don't need any. Yeah, because you suck at your job.
Oh, what do we have for time here? What are we
Oh,
running at?
we're almost at an hour here. We've been
All right.
talking and gabbing about all that and
Just
disasters,
curious.
and
Maybe I'll
I
start doing
think
a
that.
timer or
But
something like that.
when I would love to see with disasters a channel of hope and of good news and good deeds instead of why it seems like the disaster's not even over and everybody is rushed to have a judgment and blame
Or
who did
conspiracy.
this. And I would say that, frankly, it's a fire. And they did get I understand they got an arsonist in Calabasas. But I mean, when I was out there, if I'd have been smoking a cigar, and when I smoked out there, I actually dug dirt and stuff
Oh
it in the,
yeah, no. In my
and then I
ashtray
spit,
out
I
here, I
put it
have
in
water and
water. I
yeah.
did all that kind of stuff like that because I was like, this is some freaky shit out here. Fire here just happens. So no way would I ever do that. No way would I ever, when I smoke cigarettes, I would never throw them out the window out there. I'd throw them out any other place in the world, but there I would never do it. Because I'm a pig, but I'm not an arsonist. But anyway, it's just like I would love to see a bunch of positive stories on these are things that are good, and these are how people are helping.
I'm
And
starting to see those. They're coming out more and more,
good,
unless it's
good.
disaster stuff.
I want people to say that uh, we can come together when there's a disaster, and we can help each other. And it's like when you saw those in Tennessee, and people were moaning and groaning. You saw a lot of people like the Amish go down there, and they built houses. They built like 100 houses. They went down there and just did it. And you don't that's not in the news very much. It is a little bit, but not a lot. There's more like the politicians screwed everybody because they didn't build a wall
They were
here and do
roasting
this.
Newsom on a channel. This woman was. She was like, "Why didn't
Yeah,
the fire hydrants have water in them? Why are you such an irresponsible governor? Why are they going to be empty the next time this happens, huh?" And she was just kind of doing
yeah.
the
And who
schooling
was
it.
she?
Just somebody that had her house burned up.
Yeah, but I bet. But was she looking for followers?
No, she was covered in soot and ash. And what?
Oh, so she was not a she was someone that was hurt and couldn't respond. It's like when you uh
Your house burns down and there's no fire in the hydrants. I'm gonna be pretty angry too, you know?
no water, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm gonna be
I
pretty
would have to
frustrated.
wonder if it was because I voted against paying for the tax dollars to make sure that there were.
You never know, right? Well, I think it's
But I
also the
would but the
mayor's
thing is
fault, and they were talking about the mayor's on vacation in Ghana or something,
mhm,
and how she just got back to this. But
yeah.
did she go on vacation before the fires happened? That's my question,
Yes,
right?
she did. She
Yeah,
did. And
there
it's
you
like
go.
it's kind
See?
of like when people aren't there when it happens. It isn't like Ted Cruz when Texas got hit with the storm, then he went to the islands. That is kind of bad,
Yeah.
you know. Like if we had a disaster hit and then it's after it hits, I jump on a plane and say, fuck off. I'm leaving you guys here to rot. That's not a good, that's bad. But
Bad
if you're
strategy.
already
Bad
on
political strategy.
yeah, if you're
Gotta be
already
there
on
for your people.
vacation, you're like, I would be zooming in and saying, "Hey, I'm on my way. I'm cutting short. I'm going to be there to, maybe I can't do anything, but the least I can do is have my feet there and show you that I care, and walk around and shake people's hands and talk to them and see if there's things that we can do better that we did wrong this time." And I think that in the self assessment has to be, uh, uh, what are you going to do better? Well, how are they going to put water in those next time? If there wasn't water in them, if there truly wasn't water in them, the question is why, and then what can we do to make that not be there next time?
Yeah.
So those got to be the questions because and was it why because of I don't know. I don't know. I'm not a wastewater treatment or a water treatment engineer guy. I talked to my brother about it and I said, well, why didn't they just I said the weirdest thing to me was that scene. Remember Malibu where all those beautiful homes are that we would look at and say, wow, I wish I could live there.
I never
Well,
wanted to live
now,
there. That's a
oh, I
nightmare.
always wanted to live there because it was
Really?
so wicked cool. You're right on the beach. You had the big $50 million house,
The
which is
worst
really
traffic in all of
that's a
LA.
two-bedroom. Who cares? You're in the best place in the world, but they're
It's
all
not
burned
a
to
nice looking
nothing.
place. There's like one restaurant, there's like one place to go, and it wasn't very conducive for travel.
Well, the interesting thing is, I said, well, what about the water, the seawater? I said, you're right next to an ocean. Why could they do that? And he goes, well, if they scoop up seawater and they put it anywhere, it destroys all the vegetation on the ground. Can't grow anything there afterward. Anything, if you pour it on a house, every single part of the house is going to corrode that's metal and it will all fall apart. So you may not have destroyed the house, you may have put the fire out, but now
You're
the
dealing
house
with
is
a
just going to
whole different can
dissolve.
of worms.
It's gonna make everything. And he said, and all the fire equipment that uses it, that scoops it up, that's all going to have to. It's gone. Every pipe it goes through, all that stuff like that, that's all corroded. It's going to fall apart. Seawater is not a good thing to put on things
I
you
believe it.
know and
I
because
certainly
I thought
believe it.
like, well, how can you be that close to an ocean not be able to do
I was
you
wondering the
know
same thing that even the beachfront properties are all gone too. And the
yeah
place that I think I already mentioned this, the place that we shot
yeah
in for that short is gone as well,
yeah
which I think is pretty
yep.
crazy. But I think on that note, are we wrapping up here?
Yeah, I just want to say that I hope the people get through it. I hope that I hope the poor people get a leg up, those that have less. I know that the wealthy will come through this with flying colors because they have the power and the money, but I hope that a lot of people out there that need it get it. Uh Here, here.
Same here. And as always, thank you guys for listening. A Record of My Father podcast.com. And also find us on YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Yeah, find us there and be easy, everybody. We'll talk to you later.